Good morning, welcome back to Milmo Wood here in the beautiful North Wales. Today I'm going to be making a large lantern, Chinese style lantern. The inspiration for this was from a YouTube video, so don't lay credit to the full design, but I've put my spin on it. I've made a demonstration one or a development one, and now I'm in for making the next model, the improved version if you like. I've created some plans. I'm following through the plans and I'm making alterations as I go and some measurements of the amount of wood I'm using. Hopefully I'll be able to share these plans with you if you're interested. I've done some cutting already, so there's some bits cut, but I've got more to cut. So let's crack on with the video, do the cutting, and then let's start the assembly of the giant Chinese lantern. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please subscribe, hit that bell, and share it with your friends, and hopefully we'll get more people to join my really small channel here in North Wales. Thanks guys. Now my advice is to cut everything on the cut list first, using the measurements that I've given in my plan, assuming you purchased the plan. And in order to get them the same size, if I just show you quickly on one cut, because I don't think you need to see me cutting everything. And make sure you've got all your safety gear in place first. First off, I'm going to make the first cut. Then I'm going to take my measurement, and for this particular piece it's 355 millimeters or 14 inches. In order to cut the angles to make the square, I've cut the first cut in that direction. If you flip it over, you can make the cut in the opposite direction to complete the square. I've taken my measurement, I just need to take that round with a set square now. Now instead of measuring every piece, again flip the wood over, rest the piece that you've already cut against it right to the edge without powering the blade up. Keep your hands out the way, just bring it down and gently push the wood until it touches the blade, no pressure. Now you're ready to make the second cut. Continue that on until you cut all the required pieces. Okay, so now I'm cutting the insert frame. Cut the insert frame, we need the wood on its edge to cut the 45-degree miter joint. Follow the same process. I'm going to put my first miter joint on the far side of the wood and do my measurement. Before you make any cut, make sure you're comfortable and feel safe making the cut. So first cut, using the cutting instructions, this needs to be 540 millimeters long. That's 540 millimeters from the longest edge out. Again, we're going to flip the wood, make sure we get the right angle. going to use the laser as a guide. We want the blade this side of the cut, not on the inside of the cut. Just going to bring my teeth down, make sure I'm aligned, no power. Just nibble the first one. When I did my nibble, I just had to make a very slight adjustment, probably a millimetre. I've cut my first piece, and again, instead of continually measuring, I'm going to flip the wood over, just like we did with the frames. I'm going to rest the piece that I measured on the top, making sure that the end aligns up. No power on the blade, keep your fingers well away. Bring the blade down, adjust as required, make the second. There's my second piece without measuring. I'll continue now and cut the rest. Okay, so we cut all the wood, and now it's time to do some sub-assemblies. So the ones I'm going to show you here are the insert frame for the sides of the lantern. We need to make 4 of those, and basically it's a box, and the way I'm going to glue those together is I'm going to use some painter's tape. I'm going to stick each piece of wood onto the tape. Make sure the joint's really tight together and straight. And then we apply the wood glue. Of course it's end grain, although there's not going to be any pressure on these pieces. We need to make sure that they're glued properly, and the glue will tend to absorb in the end grain. So let's just make sure we got plenty. We don't want too much squeeze out, so we don't want to overdo it. Just enough to make sure we get a good joint. Once we've applied the glue and we're comfortable with that, we can then just roll the pieces together, ensure the joint's nice and straight. Adjust as you go. And then I just apply a little bit of tension in the tape to finish off. Make sure it's nice and straight. Again, it's not a classic piece of furniture, but we need it as clean and tight as possible. Just going to clean the inside of the joint out of any excess glue. I'm going to use a little paint scraper for that. Okay, 1 complete, 3 more to go. We'll put that on one side to dry. So as you can see, we've got all 4 now glued together. We can put them on one side now, wait for that glue to go off, and move on to the next section. Okay, so the next section I'm gluing is the top frame. I'm going to follow exactly the same process as I have done for the lower frame, for the insert frames. I'm going to lay out my painter's tape, lay the wood on edge this time. Again, just make sure that the joint's really tight against the tape. Hopefully you've got more room in your workshop than I have this morning. And then we can start to apply the wood glue to the joints. So just fold up the joints again. Make sure the joint's squared on, and then apply a bit of tension onto that last piece of painter's tape and squeeze that joint closed. A bit of squeeze out, which we'll clean up. We'll be able to sand this down, so once that glue's dry, not too concerned. One thing I do find really useful though is to have these clamps onto the joint, so as to keep that joint level while it's drying. Just make sure we're nicely squared up. Again, though, we do have an end customer in mind, so we do need it to be as accurate as possible, but there's no expectations of everything being perfect. So we've got lots of sub-assemblies drying off now. I've cut the pieces for the roof top. This sits in the centre of the main roof, and I've designed this so we glue the same size wood, the 50 by 25mm, together. If you have a roller, that will help, but for me, I'm just using my finger. I'm just going to lay the wood down. This is cut slightly oversized. And then we're just going to clamp this wood together. What's important at this stage is to make sure that the battens of wood are as level as possible. We're still going to sand this afterwards, but to reduce the sanding, just make sure the wood's level, and then squeeze that clamp in nice and tight, wiping off some of the excess, using my fingers to feel how level the wood is. Apply the second clamp. Take the squeeze out from the opposite side. Another way that I've done that previously is to use a scraper and just scrape the excess off. But either way, because ultimately we're going to sand it. So we now have 3 lots of sub-assemblies together. I've already glued the bottom frame for the base. Next section we need to glue is what I'm calling the venting crown in the plan, and similar with the roof top, we're just going to glue this wood together. Come back to that later in the video and show you when I've done it.